The District of Columbia Housing Authority is one of the district's largest landlords, providing affordable housing to approximately 50,000 residents. Our over 800 employees are proud of the work that we do to help foster sustainable communities and cultivate opportunities to help customers improve their lives. This work doesn't happen in a vacuum, and it doesn't happen without a plan. This is the story of how we developed that plan. DCHA's Transformation Plan. I'm Sheila Lewis, and I would like to introduce you to our new podcast, We Are DCHA. In this episode of Our People, Our Portfolio, Our Plan, you'll hear from Executive Director and CEO Tyrone Garrett.
Our transformation plan could not be successful if it didn't have dollars attached to it. It just wouldn't work. Putting it down on paper was great, but we all know what makes it happen is someone offering a dollar amount, some funding sources for us to get started.
Alex Morris, Chief of Planning, Design, and Construction.
We have come to a point where the portfolio is over 50 years old generally. We need to make a much more transformational change than simply making adjustments around the margins.
And this episode's host, Vice President of Public Affairs and Communications, Jose Sousa.
How does the $50 million investment of district funds help set the table per property for residents to understand what transformation means for DCHA and for the buildings that they're residing in?
These are the people who are in the forefront doing the work to make the transformation plan happen. Let's listen in on the conversation.
This is a wonderful opportunity for DCHA to share how we will continue to develop sustainable communities. Mr. Garrett, can you walk us through what led you to develop a transformation plan when you first arrived at DCHA?
DCHA is no different than any other housing authority across the country. What we face, along with our colleagues at the other housing authorities through the nation, are a series of issues, especially dealing with capital improvements and quality of life concerns that plague housing stocks that are over 50 years old. And that's what we have at the District of Columbia. And so the creation of a transformation plan really stems from an internal look at our housing stock, our portfolio across the board, through actual inspection. So we inspected every single unit within our portfolio in 2018, 2019 for issues of environmental concerns such as lead, mold, and water leakage, and also infrastructure issues such as lead that may have been plaguing units and our customers.
We know that in an era of competing resources, it's not possible to get everything done all at once. Was it your vision that this transformation plan be used as a roadmap for the future of the agency?
It is a fluid document, Jose. It is not one size fits all. It's there as our opportunity and our outline. It may be through a form of redevelopment as we actually identified in the transformation plan, or it could be through rehabilitation. But because it's the working document, something that we can go back to the drawing board at any moment, that's why you have, quote unquote, Transformation 2.0. That allows us to switch it up. So if we originally thought that it was an opportunity for rehabilitation, but now it's an opportunity for redevelopment, we can go back to our stakeholders and to our residents and discuss the overall concept and plan and give explanations as to why we might make modifications and changes as we go forward.
Alex, how have you seen this process work over the course of your career? We know that there are fiscal requirements to help make some of these changes, but how does collaboration shape the way in which we attack the needs identified by the transformation plan?
One of my specific experiences prior to coming to DC Housing Authority was working on grant applications for Hope 6 and Choice Neighborhoods projects. Those are two HUD programs that allow housing authorities to work individually alone or with partners to plan the redevelopment of one or more housing sites. And through that experience, what I learned is that, the first thing you have to do is demonstrate, if you're going to apply to HUD for Hope 6 or Choice Neighborhoods, you have to demonstrate the deficiency. You have to demonstrate the need as to why you need this. My experience coming here was, the director said to me, one of your first charges, Mr. Morris, is going to be to help me figure out how to transform the housing portfolio in DC. And so one of the first things that we did at the Office of Capital Programs was to start digging into the portfolio and really understanding what is the level of need and what are the deficiencies that need to be addressed and how best would we do that. And so one of the first things we then did after we sort of got a handle on it was started making decisions based on the data we had about what properties were appropriate for rehab and what properties really needed true redevelopment because of their physical layout or the level of deficiency in the infrastructure under the ground or just the overall design. Did the design allow for it to be rehabilitated into a 21st century affordable housing project, or did it really need to be rethought?
Soon after developing the plan, the DCHA team had some really difficult but honest conversations at town halls with communities throughout the portfolio. Mr. Garrett, give us a sense of what you heard at those meetings that helped validate your decision to undertake this exercise.
Wow, it was a really intense set of meetings across the board last summer and also this summer in dealing with the residents. What I took from it was that we needed to be as transparent as possible when dealing with our residents to explain to them exactly what we had found and what our course of action was going to be. And residents validated our positions by their concerns about just work orders that were being generated at the properties. But the idea was, if we hear what the residents are saying, what are we going to do about it? It wasn't enough for me to just sit there and listen to these complaints and these concerns that the residents kept bringing to us without saying, hey, we need to have a plan to deal with it, sincerely deal with it in a manner that it may take some time, but it was going to be thought out. It was going to be considerate of the residents because, change in what I'm proposing and what the administration was proposing in this particular instance, a transformation plan, is something that creates anxiety among us all. Maybe some relocation that will have to happen so rehabilitation of units can take place. All these things rolled up into one big plan scared people, and it still scares people to this day. So the one thing I do know that I took from the residents, if nothing else, was for the agency to be as transparent as we possibly can be to alleviate some of the fears and concerns residents had. They worry about being displaced in a manner where they won't be able to return to the actual units or the actual complex or community that they once lived in. And we needed to dispel those particular myths to assure residents that they would be able to come back to the community that they had always lived in or they knew. And that if they decided to relocate, we would handle them in such a manner that would give them the opportunity to possibly become successful outside the quote unquote public housing realm, but also give them the opportunity to return if they thought they wanted to at the time of redevelopment or rehabilitation.
I know that both of you have been involved in several conversations, not just within the agency, but also within the larger ecosystem of the public sector here in the district. The Transformation Plan document was developed to showcase opportunities with the Office of Planning, with the Department of Housing and Community Development, and with the Deputy Mayor's Office for Planning and Economic Development. How have we been able to use the document to contribute towards their buy-in around shared goals around increasing and preserving affordable housing locally?
Jose, I think the first point that the transformation plan made with everyone was that there was an actual need. And once we were able to establish that, I think we grabbed the ear of everyone. And now there began the dialogue where we fit into the overall concept and plan of creating affordable housing within the district. But in addition to that, improving our actual housing stock. So I think the transformation plan itself was an opportunity for us to establish our presence. It is a team effort across the board between the Board of Commissioners and the staff itself who get this done on a daily basis. But I think we decided that we were going to go in a different direction with this opportunity and use it to our benefit to engage others and to establish baseline foundation, so to speak, of what our need was. And then from there, the opportunity to interact and work with other sister agencies, work with the mayor and council within the district, I think grew. We needed to be able to have and start a conversation. And I think the transformation plan did just that.
So, Jose, I would agree with Director Garrett in that point that I think putting the written transformation plan out there allowed us to really set the tone of the debate and get the conversation started. I think that informal conversations that occurred before that probably, as Director Garrett started messaging to the community that there was a problem with the portfolio that needed to be addressed, there were options to utilize the tools that HUD gives us to start to address those problems. Writing it down and putting it out in the public and getting public comments to that really kind of kicked that debate into a higher gear. As Director Garrett said, change is difficult, change is scary in some ways. And so there's always a tendency for there to be a counter argument of, well, why can't we just keep things the way they are? And I think that what we tried to do with our people, our portfolio, our plan, 20-year transformation plan was really put the message out there that those kinds of small incremental steps were not enough, that we have come to a point where the portfolio is over 50 years old generally. We need to make a much more transformational change than simply making adjustments around the margins.
And Jose, I want to add one more other thing to what Alex was talking about. Yes, our people, our portfolio, our plan has also established the fact that there was not going to be any saving grace from HUD. There wasn't going to be any additional funding coming our way other than what's already programmed through the Department of Housing and Urban Development. So we needed to figure out a way to create our own destiny, so to speak, our own direction, that we could create a plan that would also include some financial components to allow us to move this forward. And as Alex said, it started dialogue. Not everyone always is going to agree on the direction or the method, but we all have been able to establish that something needs to be done.
Let's talk about the relationship between the Housing Authority and the housing cluster agencies in the district. You've both mentioned the transformation plan served as a good starting point with a similar set of assumptions to demonstrate the need for affordable housing in the district, but also the need to continue to invest in and expand the number of units here in DC, especially given the rapid neighborhood changes that have taken place. What has the investment of significant capital from the local government over these past 2 years meant for the short and long-term needs of our current portfolio?
The first tranche of about $39 million that was proffered to the Housing Authority through the council and the administration. And then the second tranche of $50 million, which we received for this particular upcoming fiscal year, for fiscal year 21, was vital to the agency because it allowed us to establish ourselves and start to make the necessary repairs in many of our complexes. Our transformation plan could not be successful if it didn't have dollars attached to it. It just wouldn't work. Putting it down on paper was great, but we all know what makes it happen is someone offering a dollar amount, some funding sources for us to get started. And I think Alex can actually testify that those two tranches from the mayor and council were vital to getting us moving. And it also allows us to create some type of credibility to what we had been stating with the transformation plan initially and through our physical needs assessment, that there was outstanding capital needs that were there. And we can utilize the funding source from the district to leverage other opportunities to keep improving and moving through our whole entire portfolio as we see fit. And I think that was very important for us. The transformation plan helped establish that, because I can't go into a bank and say, hey, give me millions and millions of dollars without having a plan, right? You have to have a business plan to get a business loan. The transformation plan was just that for us. It was our business plan for investment from the District of Columbia and the administration itself. We're very fortunate to have that type of support from the mayor and council.
So just to build on what Director Garrett said, in 3 prior years, prior to the more recent allocations of large dollar capital money from the district, we received small single dollar million allocations of what's called the Repair and Maintenance Fund, which was essentially unallocated local voucher capacity given to us as a small stopgap capital fund at the end of each year. And what that allowed us to do was to do small replacement work, replacing chillers and boilers in buildings or fixing a roof here and there. But it never allowed us to plan multi-years into the future. And I think, again, what I think the transformation plan allowed us to do was really make the case that single year allocations of varying amounts of money from year to year don't get it done, because it doesn't allow us to look ahead more than a single fiscal year. And it forced us to always think about our portfolio needs in terms of easily achievable small dollar capital investments year to year. And what the more recent allocations and the change in conversation with the district has really allowed is, you think about last year, $39.8 million, and this year, $50 million. What it allows us to do is it allows us to put in place a more long-range vision of our capital needs and really try to address deep rehab of projects. So, for example, with the first $39.8 million, we focused on 4 properties in our portfolio: Judiciary House, the LaDroit Senior Building, Kelly Miller Townhouses, and the Langston Additions. And what we're doing now is we're doing multi-phase, multi-year rehabilitation programs on each of those 4 properties to put them into a full state of good repair, a 20-year viability, which is what HUD refers to as your sort of generational viability of the project. What the fiscal year 21 allocation then allowed us to do with the $50 million is to expand upon that. We're now touching every one of the 14 transformation plan projects with the 50 million and going beyond that. We're looking now at 28 properties with rehab or feasibility studies or a combination of capital replacement of boilers and other systems, lead abatement and environmental work, really getting deeply into the portfolio. And I think in the future, as we look toward fiscal year 22 through 27, we're starting to build now a 6-year capital plan, much like all the other departments within district government, where we can look out 6 years into the future and really start to plan a campaign where we can address properties on a recurring basis in a 6-year revolving plan.
And Jose, the transformation plan itself takes a no more Band-Aid approach. It also allows the agency to prepare as an organization professionally as to the direction we're going to be traveling in. And I think that's very important because it takes us to the point, how do we service our customers better? Whether there's training or whether there are other initiatives that we need to take on, we need to make sure we have the right team on board. And so that is Alex. He wasn't an individual that was originally with the organization. He was recruited to come in for his past performance with housing authorities. And that's an example of how we have been moving forward. And it is really a team effort to not only restructuring our portfolio, but also restructuring our overall agency to become more efficient and show everyone the capacity that we have.
Approximately how many units do you think are going to be brought back online within our portfolio through this investment of $50 million that's coming in over the next couple of years from the district?
We're estimating actually about 300 units will be brought back online with this first tranche of funding of $50 million. And that goes to what I was talking about in regards to build first opportunities. What we think we'll be able to do is do some consolidation on sites that we can move some of our residents around into renovated units to allow for on-site development, which is great for us. And I think that's not something that we originally thought about when we began the transformation plan. But this is just a clear example of us not only creating a plan, but also listening at the same time, as I stated. And I think that should be a theme that we should continue to talk about in the out months as we move through, because we'll have some other changes that we might want to make. But again, 300 units brought back online, which is a great opportunity for us to shift the portfolio and make some real headway in terms of redevelopment and rehabilitation.
One of the things you mentioned is that consolidation can lead to creating better avenues towards build first, allowing the housing authority to better define its imprint on its own portfolio. This is where sites that could serve as phase one developments would permit residents to remain on site while new units are being constructed onto these same properties. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Funding makes all the difference. You can have the best plan, but unless you have something to help you implement it, it'll be very, very difficult to get off the ground. So we're fortunate to be in that particular position to be able to have support from the mayor and administration.
Some of the feedback we've heard from our stakeholders is that our transformation plan is a very large document, that it can be difficult to understand, especially when educating and informing residents on what it means for them. How does the $50 million investment of district funds help set the table per property for residents to understand what transformation means for DCHA and for the buildings that they're residing in?
Well, Jose, I actually should be asking you that question. You started that type of resident engagement for us. And the initiative in which you began for us, which is more intense resident engagement, will get us there. I think we have to continue that type of dialogue, not just once every year. We need to repeatedly go back to our communities and let them know what's going on with the transformation plan and how it actually affects their property. Now, the way you've broken it down in reality is to do one-pagers for each property so that residents can clearly digest what we're talking about. I've talked to Alex about, hey, let's figure out a way to be more visual with some of the initiatives that we're doing so that residents and the community as a whole can actually see physically what we're talking about, the changes that we need to make to our unit structurally. Because a lot of times that is what gets the attention of individuals, not a long drawn out document, but other ways to engage and keep people's interest in what we're doing. It's important to take that tack because now residents know what to expect when we come to visit them. They know what they're going to hear. And as people talk to one another, there's no change in our story as we move around from property to property.
So just to build on that, I was thinking of a saying that I like to use, that the climate is what you plan for, but the weather is what you get. When we wrote the transformation plan and did our engagement last summer, in the summer of 2019, we were able to go out and do in-person engagement with large groups of people in community rooms and other spaces throughout our portfolio. And it was all done face to face. When we knew that we needed this year to then re-engage with another round of engagement around our transformation plan, we were faced with COVID. And so COVID forced us to think more creatively. And again, kudos to you, Jose, that we were able to figure out, you and your team along with us, to figure out like how we could do virtual engagement during the time of COVID, so as not to put our residents in jeopardy health-wise, but also make sure that they had information about the status of the transformation plan and the vision going forward, and allow them a means to provide meaningful feedback to us on those plans and on our portfolio. I think that it's been a challenge, but just like anything else, the plan is your roadmap, but the day to day is what you're into. That's what you have to face. So I think it's been a really great experience.
And we might couch that as Transformation 3.0. And I say that because we transformed ourselves into a virtual platform almost immediately to continue the progress that we had started early on in the year with engaging our residents. So it was very important not to lose that particular momentum, because time isn't on our side, right? When we talk about our properties, the pandemic hit us at a crucial moment as we were trying to move forward with some initiatives for various properties. And we could not stop. Being able to pivot as quickly as WebEx or a virtual platform to engage residents was really important, because we didn't lose a beat. That's vital when you're dealing with individuals and you're dealing with families as we are, and also up against Father Time. We would have probably lost a whole entire year due to the pandemic in terms of our transformation plan and trying to move some things along. So it's important to understand that, as I said, transformation isn't just on the outside, it's also on the inside. And we had to be able to do that as quickly as possible.
Mr. Garrett, when the pandemic first began, I remember one of the first things you said to the team was, how can we innovate in a time of uncertainty and where we still are responsible and accountable for serving our customers? 8.5 months into this global health emergency, we've continued to do this work. We've been able to continue to engage virtually with residents, to educate, and we've been more effective at debunking misinformation. An example of this is how sometimes residents think the housing authority is going to get rid of their property and that they will have to move once they hear the word transformation. How have we changed our approach to redevelopment in our communities? What are some lessons we've learned about how you choose to dedicate dollars to how phasing and relocation will happen for these parcels?
Well, I know Build First always comes to mind right off the bat, right? Through the transformation plan, we were able to actually start to identify locations and various properties where the Build First opportunity could be created. That was a great shift, because originally our transformation plan really didn't take that into consideration, but through engagement. And this is the big thing about why you want to keep going out to residents, why you keep asking questions, because they keep probing us. And when residents probe us, that forces us as an agency, as professionals, as individuals who care about what we're doing, that forces us to come up with different ideas and plans. So the original transformation plan as it existed last year didn't necessarily talk about Build First. This 2.0 version actually starts to pinpoint opportunities for Build First. And that's our goal. I think that is so important. And it shows exactly where we are as an agency, how we didn't just throw a plan out there for people and say, this is the way we're going to do it. We actually listened. We listened and we heard and we acted in a manner that was sincere, in a manner that I think individuals, if they took a step back, could recognize that the housing authority, based on what has transpired in past years before my administration came on, people can recognize this is a different group of individuals moving this thing forward, because we're able to make changes. We're willing to make changes. And also, Jose, we're willing to engage. We're not running away or shy about our missteps. We're not shy about what we want to do. And we're very, very poignant and diligent about interacting with the residents. Because of WebEx and because of the virtual platforms that we've been using, I think it's allowed us to actually engage with residents just a little bit more than what we were doing when we were physically getting out. I think this is an opportunity for people to dial in, to see who we are as an organization, but also it's a way for us to maintain engagement. And I think what we're going to do moving forward is use technology till its fullest, whether it be WebEx, whether it be virtual meetings, whatever we need to do with interacting with residents face to face through these platforms, but also getting information out to them electronically. there is a strong advocate community out there, and I commend them for all the hard work and effort that they do. And it was something that we needed to do a little bit better in engaging them to let them know exactly what we're up against, but also how we were going to attack it. And I think that starts to debunk some of the myths that are out there, right? If we consistently engage and we consistently give the same information to everyone at the same time, I think it works for us.
We've heard residents say that the relationship that we enjoy with HUD is one that can shift depending on who is in the administration at a particular moment in time. Do you lend any credibility to that? And does it impact the future of DCHA, Mr. Garrett?
Jose, I've been an executive director for over 20 years. And the way that I've approached new administrations as they've come in and they've also left, where we've had new HUD secretaries 2 years into the term, plans that I've created with the team are plans that can withstand those particular changes in administration. And I think that's the best way to go. No matter what, you still have an obligation to serve the residents on a daily basis. And you can't do that if you're always trying to anticipate a particular change at the HUD field office or at your HUD headquarters. And so what I do and what we have done with our transformation plan is create it so it can withstand those type of changes, right? The only thing that dictates any deviations are what we hear from our residents.
My last question for you both is, what would you define as success a year from now at the end of 2021? What are some things that you'll hope to have achieved that would provide assurances to our residents that we're moving forward on what the plan has been for the agency?
I think you have to, in this particular instance, go with the low-hanging fruit. So that probably will be the turnaround of units and consolidation of residents on site to allow for build first opportunities. Also, in some of the other properties where we're using the first two tranches of funding, those big capital fund initiatives that Alex talked about at a site like Judiciary, making those unit changes that are visual to residents, I think is a win for us. I think it really starts to get people to see who the housing authority has become and the direction that we're actually moving in. So I would say the unit turnaround is really big, along with the rehabilitation of several of our properties. People are going to actually be able to see and touch it. And actually, when you're talking about housing, right, they're going to actually be able to live in it. And that's the way to go. That's what starts to sell our story and solidify exactly what our transformation plan means and how it directly impacts the residents, our customers, on a daily basis. They need to see and they need to feel it. And I think those are going to be two big initiatives that will help us get there.
Seeing is believing, right? Being able to see it, touch it. Right now, at the 4 properties that I mentioned at the beginning, Judiciary, LeDroit Senior, Kelly Miller Townhomes, and Langston Additions, by the end of this coming year, I think the residents at all 4 properties will be able to see and touch real transformation. They'll be able to see not just an investment of a few $1 million, but several $1 million, more than that, in a full rehab set of units. They'll see the difference between an existing building that was not touched for the last 20 years and a building that's been completely rehabbed. And I think that's going to make a huge difference in not just in the perception of our plan and how real our plan really is, but also it's going to make an impact in people's lives day to day, because that's we're touching where people live.
And Jose, that's why we do it. We don't do it for any other reason than to make an impact on the lives of the people that we actually serve.
Thank you for taking the time to listen in as we shared about our people and our portfolio from the Transformation Plan. Please visit our dedicated website, www.dcha.us, to learn more or to check out smaller property-specific segments of the plan. If you have comments, questions, or feedback, email us at transformationplan@dchousing.org. You can also call us at 202-996-8526. We are DCHA, fostering sustainable communities and cultivating opportunities for residents to improve their lives.